right, let's get right into it today. We're going to do a deep dive into ChargePoint Holdings.
Okay.
Ticker symbol CHPT.
That's good.
You sent over a ton of research on this company, and looks like you're trying to decide, is this a buy or is this a sell?
Right.
And that's a smart move, especially in the electric vehicle space, which is just white hot right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very interesting company.
Wow.
And, they're really in the center of kind of this transition to electric vehicles.
Right.
They're building the infrastructure that EVs need to really, to proliferate, to really...
I feel like the gas stations of the electric world.
Exactly, yeah. They want to kind of be the ubiquitous charging station provider.
Okay.
And they're trying to do that through a land and expand model.
Oh, interesting.
So they're trying to build out their network of charging stations as quickly as possible.
So they want to be like the golden standard, the go-to.
Right, exactly.
When you pull up and you need a charge.
Yeah, they want to be the brand that people think of when they think about EV charging.
But their approach is different than like a Tesla who owns their charging network.
Exactly. Yeah, so Tesla has their supercharger network, which they own and operate.
Right.
ChargePoint is taking a different tack. They're selling charging solutions to businesses, to individuals, to governments.
Okay.
It's a capital light approach.
So it's more like they're selling the tech and not so much in the business of owning and operating the stations.
Exactly. Yeah, they're not tied down by the capital expenditures of...
That's pretty agile.
It is, yeah. It allows them to really focus on technology development.
Okay.
And expanding their network.
Okay, so how do they make money?
So they've got 3 main revenue streams.
Okay.
The first is selling the charging hardware itself.
Okay.
The second is they offer cloud subscription services for station management.
Okay.
So people who buy their charging stations can use ChargePoint software to manage...
Makes sense.
Those stations, to track usage, all that kind of stuff. Okay. And then the third revenue stream is maintenance.
Okay.
So they have a program called ChargePoint Assure, which provides maintenance services for their charging stations.
Got it.
So that's kind of a recurring revenue stream.
Multiple ways to bring in the cash.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, I'm also seeing here that they have this ChargePoint as a service offering CPaaS.
Yes.
What is that?
So this is a really interesting part of their business model.
Okay.
It's basically, it gives businesses different options for how they want to kind of engage with ChargePoint.
Got it.
So they can subscribe to charging services, they can host ChargePoint stations.
It's like a whole ecosystem they're creating.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very clever.
Right.
It allows them to reach a wider customer base.
So we got the business model, but behind every good business model, you got to have good leadership.
Right.
So what can you tell us about ChargePoint's management team?
Well, the first thing that stands out is their experience. They have a very experienced leadership team with deep roots in the tech and mobility sectors.
That's a big plus.
Yeah. Their CEO, Rick Wilmer.
Okay.
He's got over 30 years of experience in various leadership roles.
Okay. Experience definitely counts for something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what about their style of management?
Right.
Are they transparent with their investors?
Yeah, so it seems like they're pretty committed to transparency.
Okay.
They communicate regularly with investors.
Great.
And have a very active investor relations program.
That's very important.
Yeah, it helps build trust with investors.
Yeah, especially in a volatile market like this one.
Right.
I'm also seeing a lot of emphasis on sustainability in their materials.
Yes.
So are they genuinely prioritizing that, or is that just good PR?
So it seems to be more than just lip service. Their charging solutions, by their very nature, help to reduce emissions.
Sure.
But they've also received recognition for their commitment to sustainable innovation.
Really?
Yeah. So it seems to be a core part of their company culture.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. So we got the business model, we got the leadership.
Right.
But let's talk numbers.
Okay.
Let's talk about the financial health of this company.
Yeah. So that's where things get a little bit more complicated. So they've seen strong revenue growth in recent years.
Okay, that's good.
But they haven't quite reached profitability yet.
Right.
They're still dealing with some losses.
Okay.
And negative cash flow.
So not all roses on the financial front just yet.
Right.
What are some of the factors that are contributing to that?
So I think a few things are at play here. One is they have high operating expenses.
Yeah.
They're investing heavily in research and development.
Okay.
And just the rapid expansion that they're undertaking.
Sure.
It costs money to expand that quickly.
So they're spending money to grow, but not making money yet.
Exactly.
Are they doing anything to address these financial challenges?
Yeah, so they are taking some steps. They've implemented some cost-cutting measures.
Okay.
They're trying to streamline their operations to
Wow.
become more efficient.
Right.
And they're also making some strategic acquisitions
Interesting.
to bolster their technology and expand their reach.
So they're actively trying to turn the tide,
Yeah,
but whether or not these measures will be effective remains to be seen.
right. Exactly.
So to understand their prospects, we really have to look beyond the financials.
Yes.
We need to look at the market sentiment around this company.
Right.
And we're going to get into all that in the next half of our deep dive.
Okay, great.
So stay tuned.
Sounds good.
All right, so we've gone pretty deep on ChargePoint's business,
Yeah.
their leadership, their financials.
Right.
But now let's zoom out and look at how the market is perceiving this company.
Okay.
Because ultimately, market sentiment can make or break a stock.
Absolutely. Yeah, investor sentiment is crucial.
So when it comes to ChargePoint, what are we seeing? What's the market saying?
Well, I think the market is sending some mixed signals. Their stock has been kind of volatile lately.
Up and down.
Yeah, reflecting some uncertainty, I would say.
Okay, so what are investors unsure about?
Well, I think one of the big concerns is profitability.
Okay.
They're not profitable yet.
Right.
And investors want to see a clear path to sustainable earnings.
Sure.
Those continued losses are making some people nervous.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially in a, rapidly changing industry
Right, exactly.
like electric vehicles.
It's a long-term bet.
Yeah.
And the market doesn't always love those long-term bets.
And it's not just the financials.
Right.
And of course, there's competition.
Yes. The competitive landscape is really heating up.
It's getting crowded out there.
It is. Yeah. New players are entering the market all the time.
And you can't talk about electric vehicle charging without talking about Tesla.
Right.
I mean, their supercharger network
Yeah.
is massive.
It's huge.
And they're starting to open it up
Yeah.
to non-Tesla vehicles.
That's a big deal.
So that puts pressure on ChargePoint.
It does. Yeah. They really have to differentiate themselves.
So how are their earnings reports looking?
Well, they're mixed.
Okay.
They are showing growth,
Okay.
but they're still losing money.
So still not in the black.
Right.
But it can't all be doom and gloom.
Yeah.
What are some positive signs?
Well, ChargePoint is definitely not standing still.
Okay, good.
They're innovating. They're launching new products and services.
What kind of stuff?
So some interesting things they're doing, targeting fleet operators,
Duh.
small businesses,
Got it.
really trying to cater to different segments of the EV market.
Now, Tesla's Q4 2024 numbers weren't amazing, but they were
Yeah.
better than expected. So does that bode well for ChargePoint?
Potentially. Yeah. I mean, it suggests that the demand for EVs
Okay.
might be more resilient than some people thought.
So a rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly.
But to understand ChargePoint's position even better, we need to look at who owns it.
Okay.
Who are the stakeholders here?
Yeah, so let's break down the ownership structure.
Right.
So institutional investors own a big chunk of ChargePoint stock,
Okay.
about 38%.
Like who?
You got big names like Vanguard, BlackRock.
Okay, so the big players are in on this.
Yeah, they definitely see some potential.
What about insider ownership?
So insider ownership is much lower.
Okay.
It's around 1.74%.
Okay, so management isn't as heavily invested.
Right.
Interesting.
It's not necessarily a red flag, but it's something to keep in mind.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So you've got the big institutions, and then who else?
So the general public owns a pretty sizable portion,
Okay.
about 51.8%.
Wow.
Yeah, and then you've got venture capital and private equity firms.
Okay.
They own about 6%.
So they got in early.
Yeah, they were early backers.
You mentioned insider selling
Yeah.
earlier. Is that a concern?
It's something to watch.
Okay.
There has been some insider selling recently.
So maybe some of those insiders
Yeah.
are less optimistic.
Potentially. Yeah. It's
Oh, yeah.
not a definitive signal, but it's something to consider.
All right, so we've looked at market sentiment.
Yeah.
We've looked at who owns the company.
Right.
But now let's zoom out even further and do like a
Okay.
big picture risk assessment.
Yeah, I think a SWOT analysis is helpful here.
I love a good SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Exactly. It's a classic framework for strategic planning.
All right, so strengths. What are ChargePoint's strengths?
Well, they have a clear first mover advantage.
Okay.
They were early to the EV charging market.
Okay.
And they've built a strong brand presence.
So they got that going for them.
They do, yeah. And they've got a really extensive network
Okay.
across North America and Europe. And their market share in North America is particularly impressive.
Okay, it's a pretty solid foundation,
Yeah.
but every company has its weaknesses.
Of course.
What are some of ChargePoint's weaknesses?
Well, I think the big one is their history of financial losses.
Okay,
They need to figure out how to become profitable,
Yeah.
and they need to do it relatively soon.
makes sense.
They also have pretty high operating expenses,
But,
and they're somewhat reliant on government incentives.
okay, so if those went away,
Yeah, it could be a problem.
what about opportunities? What are some big opportunities for them?
Well, the global EV market is absolutely booming,
Yeah.
and that's a huge opportunity for ChargePoint.
Okay.
And government support for EV infrastructure is increasing.
That's a big plus.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
And then there's also the potential to expand into new markets,
Like where?
Asia, Latin America.
Okay, so big growth potential.
Growth potential, yeah.
But what about threats?
Yeah, so competition is a major threat. There's a lot of competition in this space,
Right.
and it's only going to get more intense.
Sure.
There's also the risk of technological disruption.
Right.
What if a new technology comes along?
Makes them obsolete.
It makes ChargePoint's technology obsolete.
Wow.
Economic downturns could also impact EV adoption rates,
Okay.
which would hurt ChargePoint.
Of course.
Regulatory changes are always a risk.
All right.
And then cybersecurity.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It's a big one as their network grows.
They have more to protect.
Exactly. They're a bigger target.
Okay, so a lot to consider here.
Yes.
We've really gone deep on ChargePoint. What are some of the key takeaways?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to really carefully weigh the potential rewards
Okay.
against the risks.
Sure.
This is not a risk-free investment.
ChargePoint?
Yeah. It's a company that requires close monitoring.
Okay.
You have to stay informed about their financials,
Right.
about the competitive landscape.
Regulatory changes?
Yeah, any changes in the market.
So it's not a set it and forget it type of investment.
No, you got to stay engaged.
It's an active investment.
Yeah, you got to be willing to ride the waves.
Okay, so we've gone through everything, but we always like to leave our listeners
Yeah.
with something to think about.
Okay.
So here's a question for you.
All right.
If ChargePoint were to partner with a major energy company, how could that impact their growth
Oh, that's a really interesting question.
and their ability to compete?
Yeah, a partnership like that could be really powerful. Well, it would give them access to a huge network of potential charging locations,
Okay.
and the energy company would have a lot of expertise in energy management.
Right.
So it could really help them scale their operations.
So it's something to consider as you're doing your research.
Absolutely, yeah.
And speaking of research, as always, we encourage all of our listeners to do their own research
Yes.
before making any investment decisions.
Please.
We provide the insights, but ultimately the decision is yours.
Right. We're not financial advisors. We're just providing information.
Yeah, we use publicly available data
Right.
and AI-driven analysis.
Just to inform our discussions.
Exactly. But we're not giving financial advice.
No.
So talk to a financial professional
It's clean.
before you make any moves.
Good advice.
That's all for today's deep dive into ChargePoint.
Okay.
Hope you found it valuable.
Yeah.
As always, you can find links to all of the sources we use for this analysis in the episode description. And if you have any suggestions for stocks that you'd like us to cover,
Yeah.
in future episodes, leave them in the comments below.
We love hearing from our listeners.
Absolutely. Until next time,
All right.
stay curious
Stay informed.
and keep diving deep.